At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and first up we have the recognitions and celebrations. Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, if you wouldn't mind just doing a quick roll call of attendance.
All right. Let the record reflect that all board members are present with the exception of Ms. Pritchard.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, members of cabinet, this evening we have an amazing recognition to present, and Renee Ryan will present this information.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Kellis, and cabinet, it is my pleasure to share with you that our very own Melanie Caron-Vlasic has been recognized with the 2021 Lifetime Achievement in School Social Work Award. The honor recognizes her exemplary service to children and families and mentorship to other school social workers. Melanie, please join us at the front left of the room to receive your certificate, and then proceed to the backdrop at the east side of the room for a photo. Melanie is a social worker at Ashton Ranch Elementary School and was recently recognized for the award at the School Social Work Association of Arizona's March 5th annual conference. March is School Social Worker Month, and this week is actually School Social Worker Week. Please join me in congratulating Melanie Caron-Vlasic on this achievement.
Next, we have audience with individuals. I'll read the statement. This is the time for the public to comment. Members of the board may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda pursuant to ARS 38-431-01. Action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. In order to facilitate accomplishing the business of the district in a timely manner, a time limit of 3 minutes will be imposed for each individual or group addressing the board. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. First up, we have Angela Bernhardt.
Dear Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Kellis, and cabinet. My name is Angela Bernhardt, and I'm a member of the School Social Worker Association of America. March is designated as Social Work Month. This week, we pay honor to the extraordinary social workers that serve Dysart Unified School District. I'm going to read each person's name. Delilah Riverview, Jackie West Point, Mary Freedom, Andrea in Kingswood, Brenda, Sonoran Heights, Mel, Ashton Ranch, Megan, Sunset Hills, Samantha, Western Peaks, Sarah, Willow Canyon, Tawanda, Valley Vista, Tammy, Dysart High School, Tammy with a Y, Marley Park, Kenny, Shadow Ridge, Hannah, Countryside, Tracy, Luke, Lee, Cimarron Springs, Kayla, Canyon Ridge, Rebecca, Dysart Elementary, Monica, Surprise, Anna, Thompson Ranch, Amanda, Asante, and Julie, Mountain View. These ladies are truly extraordinary women in the Dysart Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Next, we have the Student update, Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of cabinet. This evening, we have two of our extraordinary students who will provide a report to the board.
Okay, hi there. My name is Dominique, and I go to Dysart High School. Just yesterday, our Student Leadership Council met to discuss quite a few things. As always, we get an update from each school and celebrate the extraordinary things they are all doing. This meeting's topic item was to find a way to include all clubs and sports on each campus by doing an advertisement campaign to highlight them. We also took the time to talk about opportunities of growth for our high school sites. Many of the items that came up were in regards to school culture and spirit. As a result of this, next month's meeting will be to look for ways to improve both culture and spirit at our schools.
My name is Luis Payan. I am a senior at Valley Vista. We also want to take the time to say thank you to our amazing community for supporting us with the COVID relief drive. We have many school sites with tons of donations from the community. Some schools have told us that they have over 15 to 20 boxes and bins full of donations. To give you some reference, these are big trash bins. These are not small little containers.
Wow.
In fact, it became a challenge for Valley View Food Bank to be collecting them, so they have rented a moving truck to collect them all on Friday. And on Friday, we're going to do a final count and a picture here at the district office at around 11:30. So yeah, that's our update.
We'd love to see it.
Thank you. Next, we have the superintendent update. Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of cabinet. I just, first of all, want to give huge commendations to the leadership of our student council, our Dysart Student Leadership Council. This is not just a simple task that they are pulling off to bring in this much relief for our community, but they are also engaged in many other things, and so congratulations to you and to everybody who's participating. On behalf of administration, I would like to extend also congratulations to all of our social workers for the work that they are doing. I again want to thank Melanie for the work that she's done and is doing. To be recognized with a Lifetime Achievement Award is significant. And to have one of our own counselors in Dysart be the recipient of that award is extraordinary. And so it is, she represents all of the social workers, but she represents them with such great leadership and with the skill and all the attributes that a social worker should have. Our students are fortunate to have her and all of our social workers in the places where they are, especially right now during this COVID time. We're hearing a lot more about the side effects of COVID. We've gone through probably, I hope, the worst of it as far as cases and the medical part, but now we're dealing, and we will be dealing with a lot of the social emotional fallout of COVID. And so we're fortunate that we have the social workers who have the contacts with the families and the students individually and will be there for them as they need those services. So thank you to you and to all the social workers that you represent. We are having an enjoyable week this week doing the prize patrol for Dysart Heroes. We've been out to about half of the school so far. We're again fortunate that we're able to do things a little bit more traditionally this year. Rather than not being able to bring anybody together, we're actually able to recognize people at their work sites. And so we will be continuing that during this week and a little bit when we get back from spring break. And speaking of spring break, everybody's been looking forward to it with great anticipation. But I would hope that everybody enjoys their spring break responsibly, and we want everybody to come back healthy and safe and relaxed and ready to finish out the year with a strong finish. That's all I have to report.
Thank you. Next, we have the governing board update. I had the privilege of volunteering for Read Across America, visiting Countryside Elementary and reading to Mrs. Karlovich's class as well as Ms. Bowman's class, and that was really fun for me. and I just really want to thank Countryside for having me. I also volunteered for the Valley Vista Marching Band, doing concessions at the Surprise Stadium again this weekend. So that was exhausting, but good. And that's all I have.
I also got to participate and read Across America. I got to hang out with Miss Fallon and Miss Greer's class over at Countryside, and it was great to see them. I love their students. They're great teachers.
I also, in response to Read Across America, got to read several classes this week. I read to a second grade class at Canyon Ridge and to 2 kindergarten classes at Countryside. And those kindergarten classes, oh my gosh, those kids. I asked a question, and every one of them, it was, don't ask a question to a kindergartner. Learn my lesson. I attended Guys and Dolls musical. Oh my gosh, that was so enjoyable. Those kids are so talented. And the music, I hadn't heard Frank Sinatra in a very long time, so that was fun. I've been visiting schools, so this last couple of weeks I visited Western Peaks and the Growing Minds Preschool and Willow Canyon. And then I've also enjoyed participating in the Dysart Hero Squad and going out to all the schools and watching, how surprised everybody is when they won the award. And so congratulations to all the heroes that got the award and to those that will be getting their awards in the next couple of days. So thanks to them for all they do for the district.
Well, I could say ditto, 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 but also had the opportunity to read Across America. Let's see. I visited Miss Ray's third grade class at Canyon Ridge, Miss C's fifth grade class at Riverview, and then Miss Diver's third grade at Countryside, and Mr. Dumond's fourth grade at Countryside. And I brought my own book. It was one of the newer ones, and it says, If I Ran a Dog Show. So, of course, since I have several dogs at home, there were loads of questions. So it's not just the kindergartners.
Okay.
It's even right up until the fifth graders. They have lots of questions about dogs. But each one was enjoyable, and I loved the questions and I loved the curiosity of all of our students. Also visited Guys and Dolls, and I will have to apologize for anybody that was sitting near me because those toe-tapping songs I actually sing out loud when that is going on. So Luck Be a Lady Tonight was a real bang-up. Also have been participating in the Dysart Hero Squad yesterday and today, and there were tears, and of course there was excitement, and there's one even starting to back up because he really didn't know what it was. But it was lots of fun, and of course when the kids get into it, they are really excited that their teacher or their principal won, so it's awesomeness. Next week, spring break, please be safe, have fun, and we expect to see everybody back here on that following Monday. So that's it. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, social workers are some of the best that are out there. And I cannot speak for Miss Pritchard, but I know since she is a social worker, this is one of the dear things for her as well. So putting in a plug for Miss Pritchard there. So, but thank you, social workers, for everything you do. That's it.
All right, moving on to item E1. Consent agenda item. I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Grant. Motion passes. Next, moving on to item G1. Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of cabinet. As part of our monthly monitoring of board policies, that has been a regular scheduled feature of each month. We present the first part of Section 10 And the board has had access to these revisions, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Since this is just the first read, there's no action to take tonight.
I didn't have any questions on these.
Okay. We will be bringing back the second part of this next week, and if there are no changes between now and the next time we meet, this will appear under the consent agenda for the second read.
Okay. Moving to item G2, information on 2020-2021 academic data. Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of cabinet. I will let Dr. Pulling introduce this item.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Kellis, cabinet, and audience. It's our pleasure to give updates on academic data. Of course, our top priority is student achievement and the learning of students in class every day. And so we will give this update and tell you what we're doing to improve student learning and work on our student learning data. So I would like to introduce Dr. Weifrich, our Director of Research. She will present.
Good evening, Madam President Densmore, board members, Dr. Kellis, cabinet, and community. Thank you for allowing us to present tonight. We are here with the data update for March. So tonight we are going to begin with the K-8 ELA. Listed in the blue is the benchmark 3 overall school percentage proficient. In the pink is the breakdown of the person versus the remote learning on the right of that. We did give you the number tested and the percent proficient of that number tested. Just as a reminder, we do expect some drops to our third quarter 1920 and the beginnings of 2021 from our COVID situations. You will see a drop from last year's benchmark 3 to this year's benchmark 3. Overall district, our ELA is at 33% proficient. We utilized the same color coordination system, although it seems like it's a little difficult to see up there, but your overall district math benchmark is at 35%. So sometimes I think it's very misleading to only compare yearly benchmark to yearly benchmark. Achievement is a measurement by students' performance at a single point in time and how well those students perform against a standard. Progress is measured by how much gain or growth students make over that time. I wanted to give you a closer look at an example of a math and ELA in a grade level for this year only. This would be from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2 within this school year. This demonstrates our student growth within the system. We expected, this is 4th grade ELA, we expected to see a 23% gain. We got a 2, okay? These were last year's 3rd graders that are 4th graders now. As we look at the 4 quadrants, and I don't have a pointer with me, I'm sorry about that. When you see the red dashed line, everyone to the right of the line is performing. There are 4 quadrants there. You have a quadrant that is lower growth, higher achievement, a quadrant that is lower achievement, lower growth, a higher achievement, and a quadrant that is higher growth, lower achievement. The bottom right, our students have a lower achievement, but they are presenting growth. And it's important to point that out, that bottom right, because those students may not be at benchmark, but they are growing. So it's very important to pay attention to those students because they may be our students that are behind, but they are exhibiting growth. So we just keep working with them to make sure they get to that proficiency level. Then when you look at the bottom left, this is our biggest area of concern on the quadrant. These are low growth students with low achievement. These are our target students for Tier 1 and Tier 2, Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. And with this, we are able to identify each student individually and utilize their data for Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction. I went ahead and utilized 4th grade math, just so you could see the same presentation here for math. The expected growth from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2 is 41. We had an overall growth achievement of 42. We still have students in the fourth quadrant area, that is our Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction, that we want to move forward. And we still have plenty of students that are moving forward and growing, however, they may not be at benchmark yet, but we are moving them with progression to that. We're going to take a look at our K3 Acadian Stibbles information. So this gets a little bit confusing. Benchmarks for DIBELS are indicators of grade level measures based on a student's progression through the early literacy skill set. DIBELS Benchmark 2 is a cumulative of all literacy skills taught in grade level during the first semester. First grade, the Benchmark 1 data reflects the loss of in-person instruction fourth quarter of kindergarten. This would be the focus on phonological skills, and you're going to see that it's much lower than the previous year's Benchmark 1 data. Second grade, the Benchmark 1 data reflects the loss of in-person instruction fourth quarter of first grade focus on phonics. It is much lower than your previous year's Benchmark 1 data. So I didn't get this slide in, but I did want to address it. The next steps for K3, the DIBELS intervention, is supplementing Tier 1 Florida Virtual with HMH instruction and other resources, including authentic text, high-frequency words, and 95% group. These are whole lesson groups. Providing Tier 2 small group instruction for 30 minutes focused on skill need areas, and also providing Tier 3 small group instruction for at least 30 minutes with an interventionist. And this is your K2 math slide, and I have to share with you that we have kindergarten and first grade schools that are still in progress with these, so it still hadn't closed as of tonight in time for me to get this to you, so I did want you to see what was in progress and let you know that they were still testing. So this is a very interesting slide. What you see here is our quarter 2 midterm compared to the quarter 2 end. The goal would be to identify the failures in the midterm, make sure that you reduce them by quarter end. Our schools have done a really great job at this. Green is our reductions, and we have a few pink wherein they didn't reduce, and I believe we have one that increased. But the goal is always taking that midterm point failure data and providing instructional strategies to reduce these failures by quarter end. This also demonstrates the higher overall failure rate of our remote learning students. So if you look, your in-person failure rate compared to your remote failure rate, most generally, your remote students have a higher level of failure. So for K-8, we have a lot of supports and action steps in place. Very recently, third quarter coming into fourth quarter now, there was a change in the remote teaching staffing. Classroom teachers no longer are holding simultaneous instruction. There are dedicated schools to remote, or dedicated teachers to remote learning. We are back on the Monday PD plan. COVID has impacted everything. So TLS and data specialists are back identifying Tier 2. We are getting stronger again with our small group instruction. Again, COVID intervened with our 6 feet, those kinds of things. So we're back at a lot of that. And then one of the good things also that I felt was really important to mention to you tonight was 95% produced a progression guide for us with instruction that implements all of the missed instruction from quarter 4 last year and wove it back into our teaching in 95% this year, working to help catch our students up in that. So that is something that 95% has provided for us. Most importantly, I think it's important that we review that K-8 had to utilize the Schoology platform this year, build their classes, learn Florida Virtual, use the online resource to deliver instruction. This was all new for K-8 along with remote learning. Where our high schools were embedded in Florida Virtual, embedded in using online resources, embedded in using Schoology, our K-8s had never had to do that before. So along with COVID, they implemented all of those issues and continued their instruction. So at this time, I'm going to bring up Dr. Sai, and she's going to take you through some high school.
Good evening. Thank you so much. As I was sitting listening to Jane's presentation, I actually asked Ken for his pen because I think we really always need to put data in a context. And we need to think of what is our initial reaction to data. You know, and looking at the ELA benchmarks, for those of you who've known me for a while, you know I'm very competitive. And, you know, I looked at the data and I freaked out. Then we have to think about what is the context of this data. I stood before you last year and I told you I thought ELA benchmark 2 was high, that I would have loved to claim we had a gain of 42 to 57, but that's not factual. It's what the numbers say, but it really wasn't in the context. I do feel that the adjustment of going, if you look at the 18-19 data for benchmark in ELA 9 at 42 and being presently in 39 is fairly reflective of where our kids probably are with the loss of school that they had. We've also had some kids that have been quarantined 20 to 30 days. We have other kids that have other outside issues. But the most important part of the data is the so what. What are we going to do with this? And I really try and emphasize to the teachers at my side and district-wide when I'm able to get out, that these are, it's like having a cough when you go to the doctor. And that cough tells us that something's wrong. With the way benchmarks are drilled down, we can say, okay, Tracy needs to work on RL1, Joe needs to work on RL5, and we can do student by student, skill by skill. It would be my belief and my hope that the 38 average you see for ELA 10 is up in the 40s by the times our kids test. One concern that I do have is the iSchool testers. The ones we got in, I think, are probably our pretty good testers. I think our kids that are failing iSchool probably didn't get in to take benchmarks. That could be for campuses as well, so we'll see how that plays out. With the next set of data with math benchmarks, I will tell you, Dr. Wyford and I disagree on the algebra, and that's okay. She's very scientific. I'm not as scientific, but you can see the average of a 19 for algebra is an outlier with any other year. I do see when I walk around on at least Valley's campus where I currently am, I don't think that's reflective of our teaching. It may come out. I tried to bet our coffee on it, but our kids will not be taking AZM2 for that. I would expect to see when they test as 10th graders that they are in the 40s. You will see our geometry went in 18-19 from 49 down to 40. It was comparable to last year. And it's still the 40s, guys. We don't want to be in the 40s. We're a district. We want to get to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, eventually the 90s, but we know that's a slow process, and we know we have some things that have worked against us this year. So that's where our schools are, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more about other data points, but what schools should be doing at this point, and what I believe they are doing, is starting to overlay their data. Lots of schools gave their geometry and their English 2 teachers time via Monday PLCs to really look and say, what students need those specific skills. I know Shadow continues to do intervention Mondays, kind of like a march to math or a walk to reading to fill specific skills and have kids interacting with their data. And we know that one of Hattie's high leverage strategies is kids self-reporting their progress. So we're hoping to see some good gains and get our kids back on track where they need to be. Jane's gonna talk to you about the really technical part, and then I'll be back.
So it's important to note, as Shelley shared with you, we don't have we're not going to have a 9th grade test this year. Next year, we won't have a 10th grade test. We're going to have a 9th grade test next year and an 11th grade test next year. And then the following year, we're going to have all new tests again. So with the state of Arizona, we're getting no baseline going on. So it's a little bit confusing to try and keep up with where they're going and get an actual baseline going for our kids. But I did want to discuss the algebra learning loss just a little bit. So from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2, we cover the aligned standards. And the difficulty of the questions differ in each standard areas from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2. The average expectation on this last algebra test was a 21-point growth. Cut scores are moved higher on benchmark 2 because of the expected growth, although the same standards are covered. It is just like a bell curve, and when you look at it, we're at the middle of the standard deviation. When you move to 1, 2, 3, you are looking at a harder question. When you move to -1, -2, -3, you're looking at a very easier question, much easier question. So it's just how we look at it. So when we looked at the 2 tests, when I saw the algebra scores and we pulled the parametrics on the test, I'm giving you an example. Discrimination is how well an item is covered, a standard is covered, getting at all points of that item, and the difficulty is the level of difficulty of the problem. I gave you a sample standard here. This is a very sample standard in the list of standards that we use. They are all like this. They're multifaceted. Create equations and inequalities in one variable and use them to solve problems. Include problem-solving opportunities utilizing real-world context. Focus on linear, quadratic, exponential, and piecewise defined functions. That is a multi-level question. So in benchmark 1, the area of discrimination, how well it was covered, and I'm sorry, when they put the slide up, it looks like it bumped over, so I will read it to you, had a 0.06 difficulty. That same standard was tested in benchmark 2 with a 2-point discrimination and a 3.5 above the standard difficulty, meaning that standard was covered on that second benchmark in all areas of those points you see in there, and 3 points higher above the standard deviation in difficulty. So the reason they do this is because they're testing the same standards, but they're wanting students to show growth. And some of these standards require substantial growth. I took a scatter plot for you of 10th grade ELA. And again, I just pick a grade level. I did 10th grade ELA and then 10th grade geometry for you to see. So we want the bad with the good. So we have some really great things, and then we have some things we have to work on. So the expected growth on our ELA in 10th grade was 16. We had a negative 11, so there was a loss of learning there. Many, many factors are going to play into that. Again, we go back to teaching and learning. We go back to time listed, time off. We know that we have kids at every grade level, at every high school, at every elementary school who have had COVID time off. I actually have my own grandson here, and he's had 2 sessions of 10 days each off due to COVID factors. So there's just not any way around attendance can't factor into this, so it makes it very difficult. On the other end, showing you the geometry, and we have always done very, very well in geometry. We have a very strong integrated math team. So the average growth here, expectation was 23, and our average growth was 23 for the district. So we met that growth expectation in the geometry. I'm going to give you back to Dr. Asai.
And an interesting point there that I don't have the answer to is we had the negative growth in ELA, but if you look at the percent of kids predicted to be proficient, it looks the same. So there's some interesting, we really need to dig through this data and use it, but use it student by student, skill by skill again. What's up next is our 11th grade ACT. And the ACT compared to last year, you'll actually see some gains except for ACT English, which is more like the grammar and things like that, which is currently mapped into our standards. One of the reasons that accounts for that is that this year we're using Chalk Talk or Method Test Prep. So it's the first time we've had an ACT prep specific program at each campus. We did ask each campus to decide between the two what fit their needs because we know not every campus is the same. We are going to be partnering with our research side of the house to do program evaluations next year to find out which is the most effective. But we know teachers need time to get comfortable with a product before we start making those big decisions. We are excited to see some modest gains there, and we hope that it plays out when our kids take the ACT. This is ultimately very important to us because for so many of our kids that are going to college, this is one of their gateways in. And regardless if they're going to work or college, we want them to have that opportunity. With the next slide, you will see grade distributions. Our ultimate goal would be a 0% failure rate, but we would be happy with between a 3 to 5% failure rate. 2 of our schools are almost there. Shadow Ridge and Willow, if you look at them, had a 5.5. Valley was at an 8.5, and Dysart High was at a 12.4. Our schools are doing tons of good things to help with this. Next year, we will be resuming our standards-based grading pilot, which really promotes that grading equity. Kids can see with the standards where they fall and how that equates to their grades, so we're excited for that. We're also really working with our schools to work on multiple means of proficiency. And I want to be very clear with that. That is not just, hey, I want to come in and retake the test. We know that that didn't play out very well for us, that I sit down and say, oh, I just want to retake it again before I do this one. That's not multiple means of proficiency, but it is saying, okay, can you explain this to me a little more? Or 2 weeks later saying, okay, I'm going to retest you on this now that you've had some time to do it and see how that plays out. So it's very different. And I think that's an important clarification. With this slide, you should just look at it and say, wow, Bobby Lockhart. That's what I did with this one. When you see the failure rate for quarter 1 compared to quarter 2, it was cut from a 19% failure rate to an 8% failure rate. And that's a phenomenal job in a very, very short time. So things that Bobby's doing over there, it would be worth finding out about more later because, wow, that's impressive. Going into iSchool grades are pulled from our Schoology system right now. And Schoology has some limitations with being able to pull grades in terms of knowing where kids are and their percentage. So we are working through that as we look at our LMS to decide how we pull, what's valid to pull, and how it works. We do continue to have concerns about some of our learners that are in iSchool that don't make a lot of progress. We've encouraged lots of them to come back to campuses if they're not doing well. By all means, we want to respect parents' rights to keep their kids at home if they don't feel safe. But we also know if they're at home and failing, that we can probably do better in thinking of ways to service those kids. Huh? My credits? Oh, I'm so sorry. There's credits at the bottom. I went to a basketball game last night and I left my glasses, so I apologize. The girls did win, though. You will see credits down at the bottom, too. So supports and action steps. And this is the most important thing. So that's our data. What are we doing? How is it going to change for the positive? How are more of our kids going to succeed? Dedicated additional mandate to grade level team interventions and really working with our teachers, especially the high school level. What do those interventions look like? It doesn't mean that I'm slowing down and saying it louder to you and doing it the same way. We really have a lot to learn from our elementary counterparts in terms of solid interventions, and our teachers are working to do that. Working to support students in iSchool who are not successful. We have one really promising model where a teacher is actually pulling small group. I saw it the other day, working with about 6 kids on iSchool who volunteered to come to the office hours. And I saw great things from that. There was actually a lot of discussion for an online class. I was amazed. Our commons are open daily and hourly for iSchool students, and there's office hours. Addressing the needs for more direct instructional contact for iSchool class times, which they can come in. Documentation of instructional changes based on the most current data. That's, for example, we had a school that pulled their geometry team and their English 3-4 team each for half a day. And the principal really worked with them because not all of our English teachers learned how to dissect data like that. You know, and supporting our teachers because they only have so many hours a day and saying, here you go, here's packaged data for you. So now we can focus on the so what instead of having our teachers put their time in there. TLS and data specialist with identified assignments and strategies. Also, 2 things I didn't put on there that I think are really important is we're working on aligning our math and ELA for next year. The specialists are actually putting data pull dates saying we expect Unit 1 test to be done by September 23rd. We're going to pull the data on September 30th so we can look at it as a leadership PLC and figure out how to provide more supports to our teachers in our schools on an individual basis. The other thing is to work with schools on overlaying data. So like we said, the benchmark is 1 point in time, but what really matters is what's next. Amy Harchin has a very promising model of this at Dysart High. Her teachers every 2 weeks will test on 2 specific standards, like we didn't do well on RL1 and RL5. So they'll teach that where it really fits in their curriculum map, but then they'll meet with Amy and her admin team to really say, okay, now we see these kids are moving student by student, skill by skill. And I've really seen promise with that administrative support for that because as principals, we should be the best instructional leaders. At the very end, we have summer programs. We are running so many summer programs this time. Dysart is going to be full. K-8 summer programs located on designated campuses, and we have our 7th to 8th grade bridge program at DHS, which we've traditionally run. Each high school is going to be housing their own program, which is phenomenal. We just need teachers who want to teach in June and July. We're working on that. The summer senior, that didn't sound right. The Sundown Summer Program for seniors. Our seniors who fell a credit or 2 short are going to be housed at Sundown, able to graduate in the summer. So we're really excited for that. And iSchool is running their traditional program. iSchool traditional, that's also an oxymoron there. But our iSchool is running online for kids who want to work ahead or make up credits. and the high school expanding summer programming for arts and sports and our incoming freshmen. And I think we're very fortunate because there are some federal relief funds coming that we're very grateful for, that we're going to be looking at additional interventions and supports to provide for our students. And now Jane will stand for the really hard questions, and I will take the easy ones.
Actually, the whole team is here. Dana Noble and Adriel Grieshaber, everyone's here tonight to answer any questions that you might have. Okay, good. No questions. Thank you very much.
An easy question. When are you going to get your glasses back?
I think I called my husband, and they're laying on my counter.
Okay.
I should be good when I get home.
All right, okay. I did have a question, and you just said something regarding the relief, the federal relief. Do we know what is actually going to be coming in?
That would be Mr. Hicks.
That's right.
Madam President, members of the board, we're actually looking at state funding for this, as in the governor's proposals and other legislative initiatives are for interventions and for summer school right now. Although that hasn't been approved, our backdrop or contingency plan is the ESSER funds that we would commit to our summer school and our interventions. And we believe it's not just a one-year summer school intervention. It's going to take, it might take 2 years. But so state and or federal.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right. Disappointing on some of the percentages, but we knew that. And then we know that school districts across the entire nation are dealing with this, these issues not being quite connected with everything. So I'm just curious, is there, and I know I've heard the words before, is there a silver bullet that is going to draw it all together and somehow make us a little bit more successful in the quarters coming up?
I think,
Maybe.
Member Sawyer Singh-Bell, that the more we can support our teachers in packaging some data for them and allowing them to do what they do, I do want to say our teachers have been amazing through this.
Oh, yes.
And they are the real heroes in this story, that our scores aren't lower than they are. And we're very fortunate that our kids have had the ability to go to school so much more than others. But I think the silver bullet is always student by student, skill by skill. And I don't think that's traditionally been done, especially at our high school level, that it's been, let me reteach the whole class. And then the kid that got it is like, why am I here having to learn this again? And they tune out. So I think the more we can small group kids and really individual address their needs, I think that's going to be the silver bullet. It's not going to be like a, whoo, look at that. It's going to be slow and steady over time. We know our group that had the half-day kindergarten, it's taken them years and years to kind of get those scores up little by little. So, we know that the learning loss is real and not having that instructional time with the standards at the level they are. But I would say that's the closest thing that comes. And also continuing to support our teachers with professional development. And the board's always supported that with our Monday early release. And using that time very judiciously and making sure that it's very focused, that it's not about field trips, but it's about standards and kids.
Okay. So regarding the summer school programs, I am so glad we do have a variety, different programs and everything. Are we possibly going to have some students kicking and screaming not to go to summer school?
They'll probably do that in their house.
I just wanted to tack on what Dr. Asai said. It's interesting to me because I do more of the analytics of it, and I've been working with ATI, and we fit the mold in that the conversations I'm having with him, they're actually working on a couple white papers, and they're seeing across the United States that the learning loss for reading is going to really be the K-3 group, and then the math group is going to be the 8th, 9th grade group. So they're doing white papers that really across the United States, we fit right into that mold. That's where they believe that most of it will exist.
Oh, okay, all right. Congrats on Sundown. I don't think she's here, but
That's totally Bobby Lockhart.
that's totally
And
Bobby
her
Lockhart. And those are great percentages. But yeah, my main thing was the relief as far as what would be coming in or where we can use it and stuff like that. So thank you, ladies, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, did you come? Oh, I thought you were going to ask a question. Oh, I have my whole list here. Wait, you're
Look
not
out.
off the hook yet. No, seriously.
Okay, now you're just playing with
It
us.
is on. No, I'm not. I thought I'm sorry.
You're fine.
We need rules. Could you, and I'm, everybody out here, they know the answer to this, but I don't. Could you please explain to me more what Tier 2 and Tier 3 instruction looks like?
I think that's a great question, Member Grant, and we're working to really define that as a district throughout. Tier 2 would really look like I'm doing intervention and specific skills. Dana, at the K-8, that would look like a march to math. That would look like a march to math. When I think of I'm doing something outside my general ed curriculum and just pulling the small group within the classroom, we're talking Tier 2. Tier 3 would be more resource and going up that route. Would that be?
Correct. So Tier 1 is whole group, everybody.
Interventionist,
Tier
yeah.
2 would just be the small group of kids that need that extra intervention. Tier 3 is for that smaller set of kids that need extra. So
Extra.
the kids that are in Tier 3 should have Tier 2 as well as Tier 1. So we say there's Tier 1 going on every day. Tier 2 is going on every day. It's usually about 30 to 40 minutes. And then the Tier 3 would, those kids that attend that would be 30 to 40 minutes as well on top of the Tier 1 and 2.
Okay. And then, thank you. As we see these numbers and as parents start hearing about their students and their numbers, I'm sure they're going to be saying, you're going to summer school. But between now and then, what does intervention begin to look like, especially on the high school level?
That's a great question, because the challenge to the teachers is, at my campus, I told them, I don't care what these are, not that I don't care, but I want raw data, right? I want it to be the cleanest data it can be, so if the kids do poorly, they do poorly. But the question is, what do we do between now and AZ Merit? And what do we do now and even after AZ Merit in the end of the year? Because we don't stop teaching at AZ Merit. So they have actually gone through, they've analyzed each kid, they've told them, hey, here's your data, in the cases for my sophomore classes, or they will be doing that. Each group has had to figure out a plan, because it's a cohesive PLC plan. As a teacher, I can't be expected to address all that by myself. So we want to also give teachers some autonomy in that with what it'll look like. Will it be a Monday intervention? A story that I can think of that would paint a picture of what it looks like is I was walking in class at Shadow Ridge one day, and I walked in and the kids were paying abnormal attention to the teacher's class they were in. I go, what's going on? Like, I never see you guys this engaged. He goes, oh, that's not my teacher. And I go, what do you mean that's not your teacher? He goes, oh, I'm here because I don't know G5. He goes, and I need to know G5. It's a geometry standard because it's going to be on AZ Merit, and I can get a grade bump if I pass. So that's an example that the kids for that standard went to one teacher, kids for another one went to another place. One of the teams at Valley, they've designed an intervention board that kids can raise their score on the benchmark by showing proficiency. So they've designed where kids will have time to address their specific standards that they need remediation on, and they'll be able to go and click on that. They will watch a video or small group with the teacher, and then they'll take a quiz to show that they're proficient. Does that paint a clear picture?
Much better. But so what about like after school, like tutoring? So you have a student that is struggling in, we'll just pick math and science, and the teacher says, I do this on Tuesdays. And then the other teacher says, I do it on Tuesdays as well. Now, how do I pick and choose as a student? I need help. And so on every other, I pick math on this Tuesday and science the following Tuesday, or is there a way for them? I don't know. I know everybody's overworked. I get that, but.
And I think that's something that high schools can probably in general do a better job of. Right now at my current location, we have started a Wednesday after school bus. We were one of the last high schools to pick that up, and we just did. That leaves at 4:30. And what we've done is we publicize that list of teachers, and we've told parents, we call them a lot when we find out they're going. And the teachers also tutor on other days, but that's the day we have the transportation. And we've said, if you need a ride and you can't get there, even if you have Jane and Jane's not tutoring that day, you can go to any English teacher, and that English teacher will help you. And we've asked those English teachers to work together, because we have to have the idea that they're not my kids, they're our kids. And how can we help that?
But do the students understand that they can go, like, that English teacher isn't my English teacher, and so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it's an ingrained practice yet. I really don't. I'm going to be perfectly transparent with that. I think we need to work to the part where it is. And that's a cultural shift for some high school teachers. It really is, because so long it was, I walk in, I work in my classroom. These are my classrooms, my kids. And we've been working with the PLC process, but I think we have a ways to go.
And I think it's a cultural shift for students as well, because they think, oh, I have to go to that particular instructor versus, oh my gosh, I can go over here
I can go to
well.
anyone and get help, right? And that's really where we'll see, I think, some more growth and that power in it, is we're doing all of it. Jane mentioned something, I couldn't hear her.
The commons. So, for instance, Willow Canyon, the common area after school is open. So the common area is open usually with instructors in there. So there are those iSchool teachers or online teachers, and that period after school is also open. So kids are always welcome in there for any kind of help with instruction.
Even if they're not iSchool?
Yes.
Oh.
Something else that one of our school campuses is doing is Saturday school. And they're publicizing that so kids can come in and get help on Saturdays from 8 to 10. There's a variety of teachers there. And sometimes the administration does assign it if there's tardies and they see a kid's failing, but it's also open to any kid. And so some of our teachers have really done a nice job of coming in and filling those roles.
And then my final question, and I know you don't have an answer to this, but so we're looking at these numbers, and parents are seeing these numbers, and I'm sure summer school is the big chatter out there. We've got to have enough teachers to do this, otherwise we're going to be telling them, oh yeah, but. So is there a plan B for if we don't get enough, or are they just going to be larger class sizes?
I would be hesitant to make larger class sizes with kids that are making up credits. We know that, contrary to some studies that say class size doesn't matter, class size matters.
Absolutely.
If I have 15 kids in a class, I can get to them a heck of a lot easier than I can with 30. I'm continuing to beg teachers. I promised a few extra coffee outside their $23 an hour. I wish I had a magic pot of money and could say, hey, I'm going to give you more than 23. What's your magic number? Because it is time away from their families in the summer and things like that. Our iSchool is unlimited, and we do have the Collaborative Commons open, so some kids will go that way, and they can come into the Collaborative Commons and work with teachers. I think, it would behoove us to look into some peer tutoring. Can our NHS kids and things like that come in and work with our iSchool students, because we know that peer support is also a research-based method that works. Other than that, it would be when they return in fall, really focusing on, are there credits we need to make up? What do we have to do, and what does that look like? But that's a very reactive stance and not proactive stance.
And Madam President, Member Grant, I would add as well that we are working on looking at some pieces that would provide additional incentives for our teachers to be involved in summer school this summer as well.
Can the retirement community help with some of that?
Madam President, Member Grant, we'll actually talk about that in 2 presentations from now.
Oh, okay.
Look at that. That's just like always. I have a problem. Jim Dean has an answer.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no.
Thank you.
Quick question. So just for instance, if a student is failing more than one class, maybe 2 or 3 classes, maybe 4 or 5 classes, what does that look like for summer school? Theoretically.
Theoretically for summer school, kids can recap 2 full credits.
Okay.
A kid could go to English 9 in the morning, English 10 in the afternoon, English 11 and 12. So face-to-face, there's the opportunity for 2 full credits, which in a scheme of 22, I think, is it 22 to graduate, Jim? I'm really bad with numbers that way off the top of my head. In the scheme of 22 credits, that's 10%. I think. So they have the opportunity to get that. They could also take an additional iSchool class. Okay. So depending on, I guess as a parent, how much I want to stand over them, they could actually get probably between 2 to 4 credits done. I mean, if they were really, really working, that parent would be eating a lot of coffee and maybe some wine.
Yeah, I wasn't asking for a friend. And then the other question I had was just about the curriculum being used. So I know that, we did the switch over to the Florida virtual. Do we think that that's been impacting any of these numbers?
It's really hard to say because there's so many other variables out there. We do feel, and this is a feeling, I want to make it, this is a Shelley aside feeling,
Right.
non-research based. I've watched my own kids on Florida Virtual get so freaked out over, is the answer right or wrong?
Yeah.
And to me, that's not what education should be about. I want my babies to test well, but I want them to love the process of learning. So next year in most of our high school classes, we've done curriculum focus groups with some teachers, and I think Jen and Cami are going to integrate some student voice. And what is it you like about Florida Virtual? What do you want to get rid of? This semester at the high school, we told teachers all you have to give is the unit test, and the rest you can do on your own. Okay. Because we saw a lot of loss of teacher autonomy, and as long as teachers are aligning curriculum and teaching at the standards level, they should have that autonomy as long as we're seeing results. We're not seeing great results right now, but there's other things going on. We do believe we were on a really good path prior to this, and outside our English, our scores in high school English have gone up every year. We use Pearson. Our teachers prefer that. It's not as cut and dry. Okay. It's so we are going to go to a mix next year. We will use the great things from Florida Virtual. There was a great poetry unit in 11th grade, so we might hang on to that because it's free. Okay. And we will integrate it with our Pearson. Okay. Another thing we're doing is with our unit test, we've made sure to align 3 questions to every standard. So it'll give us really good standards reads between our benchmarks to help overlay that data.
Thank you. You have anything? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Next, we have item G3, Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of cabinet. Continuing with our department reports, we will be bringing in our next department, introduced by Mr. Dean.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board, Dr. Kellis, and members of cabinet. This evening, it's my pleasure to present to you our Director of Community Education, John Williams, and he's going to provide the board information related to the Community Education Department and what they're all about.
Good evening. I've narrowed this down to 90 minutes so we can get to the next presentation. So we'll go quickly through here. Yes, again, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Kellis, cabinet. Pleasure to be here this evening, talk about community education and the great things that we're doing. I want to preface all of this by saying everything that I present to you tonight, there's not one single general fund dollar that gets dumped into it. Everything that we do in community education is self-sustaining. So the services that we provide to students, families, and the larger community, the fees that you approve this evening, those are what sustains our department, our salaries, and all of the operations that go into it. So we operate like an enterprise fund. So I want to preface that as we go through some of these things and keep that in mind. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are the key program areas, and I have our management team here. So as I go through this, I'm just going to introduce them because I do nothing and they do all the work, and I appreciate all the credit. So Growing Minds Preschool, we have Emily Lopez. She is our preschool program manager. If you have not been to Growing Minds, check it out. Just an amazing place. It gives you a lot of perspective when you're walking around with 1 to 5-year-olds with just big old smiles from ear to ear. And Emily and her team do an amazing job. Enrichment activities and facility use management, both of those bullets. Maya Courtwright is our program manager that manages all of those things. And we'll get to explaining a lot of those the potluck dinner that Maya deals with within all of those different areas. The Vista Center for the Arts, Luis is gone. Luis is one of our theater interns. I was hoping to shine some light on him. He's a rock star. And we have a theater tech. Maya is also heavily involved in that as our box office and front of house manager, show nights. And it's been an amazing experience, and I'll talk more about that. Den Club and our childcare, our licensed childcare program, Christy Martinez in the back there. She is our program manager as well. Wave, Christy. Give a little wave. There you go. And then we have a new program with the advent of you adopting middle school programs, our middle school rec program. So I'll get to that. So Growing Minds, just a quick recap. We are a quality first program. So quality first, we're currently 3-star in kind of a probationary period because we're looking to be a 4-star and higher out of 5-star. Emily's doing an amazing job. And one of the ways that we're going to get to a higher rating is providing CDA credentials, and that's Child Development Associate credentials. Quality First provides grant funding that will pay for our employees to continue that education, and that will get us to a 4-star rating, which just does wonders for our program from grant funding and providing additional resources. When we look at our numbers pre-COVID, before March 2020, we're at about 225 active accounts, active students. Today, we're at 267. That is through a pandemic. And that credit goes to Emily and her team and the amazing services that they're providing. We've expanded services through her vision of adding 1-year-olds. We started with 3, we were gonna start with 4-year-olds, and we've slowly gotten younger and younger and younger because the demand is there. The demand is there. We follow Arizona Department of Health Services licensing ratios, and Emily's doing an amazing job, and that program continues to grow. The goal is to fill up. We have the capacity, licensing capacity of about 300 students on the main campus, and then expand to all of our elementary schools. Right now, we're at Marley Park. We have 2 classes at Marley Park, and we have a class at Freedom Traditional Academy. So we look to continue to grow those programs. And I'm going to say this about our Den Club team as well, but when the world shut down, the only individuals that were dealing with kids and providing services to students were the people at Growing Minds and our child care team. They never stopped. They didn't work from home. They continued to provide services to kids for essential workers that needed it. The nurses, the doctors, folks that were working at Luke Air Force, public safety officials. We continued to provide services. I can't speak enough about the people that work at Growing Minds and for Den Club. Enrichment programs. Maya has done an amazing job growing this. You see a lot of fun pictures on there of soccer. A new K through 4 6-week soccer program exploded. We had 275 kids out at Countryside this past Saturday in conjunction with a partnership that Maya has developed with Arizona Soccer Association. So all of our enrichment programs are activities that aren't otherwise provided by schools to our students and to the greater community. We share these opportunities through a lot of different marketing strategies. We started an in-motion dance program. Maya and our dance teacher, Rachel Guest. Side story, Rachel was a product of COVID. The dance studio shut down. And we scooped her up, and she is providing that service out of Growing Minds Preschool through K-8 for competitive and non-competitive dancers, and the program is blowing up. We provide middle school enrichment and recreational opportunities, driver's education. We have 1 driver's ed vehicle, so that limits our capacity a little bit, but it continues to fill up. Every time we have a class, it fills up. The demand is there. And we will be providing CPR services. We have in the past through a vendor, but we're taking that in-house, and we're going to provide that service to our teachers that need it, our coaches that need it, and the greater community. Facility use. And so you have all of these resources throughout the district, and they're open to the greater community. You can come in and you can rent a facility. These include faith-based organizations, private businesses, personal reasons, special interest groups, youth sports. City of Surprise through the IGA utilizes our facilities. And so there are a lot of different, from athletics to HOAs that come and walk through the doors of our schools. It's a great way to create community partnerships. Again, Maya manages this area. She utilizes site specialists as hosts for certain events. And then we have field technicians. You have 3 field technicians that open and shut and make sure everything's safe and make sure they're following all of our district policies and that the users feel welcome. Facility rentals, and again, this is credit to Cabinet and you, our school board. They blew up over the past year, and the reason being is Dysart came back last June and opened up its doors to churches, to other users, where other districts did not. And so what we've seen is about a 25% increase in facility use over the last year. And so we are confident we're going to hold on to these people because we're good hosts, and we're going to grow this number. All right, the Vista. We've had 3 shows in a year. We're doing good. It's been an incredible experience to be a part of this, and I thank Dr. Kellis, Mr. Dean, Cabinet, the board. This has just been it's one of the perks of my job is to work with some amazing people and have this opportunity to bring what will be and what is currently a regional destination right here within your school district with what we're doing with this. This past February 27th, we had Bill Enville, and he rolled up, gets out of the car, and he gets out, and I'm there with one of our theater techs and one of our interns, and he says, I'm really nervous. I haven't done this in a year. And I said, no problem. We haven't done it in a year either, so don't worry about it. And he had an amazing experience when he left. He said, let's stay in touch, and I want to come back, and we'll fill the house. We had 2 shows with him that were at full capacity, socially distanced, so we couldn't sell, the 1,300 seats that are there, but just an amazing experience. And we have some great shows, as you can see up there, and there's a lot of potential for that to really become a regional destination. So we're excited of what's to come with the Vista. Den Club, this is the bread and butter of community ed. This is what we do. We provide services that we want, i.e. the Vista, driver's education, but then we provide services that are needed. And childcare from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. very often is a needed service to working families, especially in a community like Surprise. A lot of people don't work here. They drive out of town and sometimes very long distances. And so this is a very much needed service. Christy mans this operation. You can see from enrollment, we dropped. We were on the incline. We were going. We were moving. We were providing a service that people wanted. And then sometime around last March, things shut down. However, we continue to provide that service to essential workers, and we're slowly seeing this number grow. Over the past month, it's grown about 100 students from 470 to about 574, and they just do an amazing job. What I will say is that 35% of the students that attend Den Club are DES qualified families. These are families that have to work, that need the service. So can't say enough about this program. I will point out 6th through 8th grade, and this is going to be germane to the next slide. I wanted to use that word. There's only 49 6th through 8th graders in Den Club. So when we look at this program for next year, we want to pilot a middle school program for before and after school called REC, Recreation, Education, and Community. It has to be something that isn't just needed, because obviously you saw from the preceding slide that 6th through 8th graders don't really need those child care services, but it's got to be something they want. And after meeting with those 4 middle school principals, we found out that these are areas that they want to promote, that sometimes they can't provide, that community education will fill in that gap. That includes recreational opportunities, open gym, open library time, study hall, tutoring, and then supporting other signature programs, collaborating with CTE, and then providing some community connectivity, leadership opportunities for those kids as they prepare for high school. So we're excited about this. We think this has good promise, and after the pilot year, this coming year, we hope that we can expand it to those other K-8 schools. So this is more of kind of a visual. I'm a picture person. There was a lot of data on the last presentation, and you lost me. But pictures tell 1,000 words. And if you look at our graphic image of what is going on financially with community ed, we are on the uptick for 2021. The pandemic hit everybody very hard, and for a self-sustaining program, we had some challenges. But we did have support, and we had support from the Arizona Department of Economic Security's grant funding. We had support by continuing, thanks to you, to stay open, provide facility rentals, run summer camp, participating in learning labs. All of those things helped us kind of sustain our programs, and we continue to grow. We were on a great path in 1920 as you look at that, but then when you look at March, the bottom dropped out, and that's when everything kind of shut down. So we're trending in the right direction. We're excited. I have an amazing team of people we've got 91 employees in community ed, from childcare services to everything. And that doesn't include our site specialists, so it exceeds that. Those site specialists traditionally are other support staff and teachers looking for a little extra pay. And we're excited of what's to come. So that is my presentation. Thank you to the board. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes.
As far as the rec for the middle schools, are teachers going to be doing that after school, or do we have separate? Is it going to be community ed staff who's providing these services?
So great question. So we will be the point of contact for all services. So Christy already has staff at those sites. And so those will be the facilitators of these programs. We do want to work in conjunction with teachers and support staff at that site. So for example, that academic prep hour, that support, we want an ELA teacher. We'll pay a math teacher to come in after hours and support students in that program. So it's a combination of folks, but we're always the point of contact. So we absorb the responsibility of running and facilitating and making it easier for everybody else.
Thank you.
My turn? Thanks. I was very excited to hear when you were going to call the 6th through 8th rec instead of Dens Club. I think you'll get more kids, because if I'm in 6th or 7th grade and you're telling me I got to go to Dens Club, it's like, oh, I got to be with those little kids. And so this will be their program, so that the Dens Club kids will think, oh, wow, I'm going to the rec program next year. So that'll be exciting. When groups rent the facility, like religious groups or sports groups or whatever, are they responsible for cleaning it when they're done? And with COVID now, do they have to sanitize it, or do you have to go in after that and clean and sanitize?
Great question. So part of the rental agreement is leave it how you found it. So that is part of when any third party comes in. But our site specialists, our field techs are also responsible for maintaining the facility, making sure it's safe and it's locked up and it's left the way that classroom, cafeteria was when they got there. We obviously partner with ABM, and they do some extensive cleaning and sanitizing after every use.
Even the Sunday groups?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I got a couple of questions.
All right.
All right. So as far as driver's ed, we have one car
Currently, yes.
currently, and how can we get some more cars?
Yes.
Besides seeing the business guy, you know,
How can we get some
besides
more
seeing
cars?
him,
Hey, Ken.
what can we do to get more vehicles?
And I think that's part of our business model is to grow that. And our hope was this year we were going to purchase another vehicle, and that didn't happen. Part of the reason was we limited some of the classes because we didn't want 3 kids in the car. We dropped it to 2 to spread them out for obvious reasons. So the goal is over the next 12 to 18 months to have another vehicle, maybe sooner than that. But it's all part of that self-sustaining program. When the money's there, we go and we continue to grow that program. We did, and I thank you for adopting those driver's ed fees this evening. That is certainly going to help pave the way to getting a second vehicle.
Okay. All right. So excited about the rec for the middle schoolers, and especially the community connectivity leadership, growing them from straight out of 6th, 7th, and 8th on the way up to high school. So that's a very comforting piece. And also the Quality First grant funding. I like money. And I like the fact that
So do I.
well, I know you do. But the fact of that funding and providing the credentials and everything for the teachers and everything, that's awesome. That is awesome. Do we have anybody that's ready for it, or they've taken part in it as far as like the funding?
The scholarships?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that scholarship started last July. We had started accepting students into Growing Minds through the scholarships, and Emily's working right now on the grant funding for for those teachers or facilitators, where we don't have certified teachers in our preschool, but those facilitators to continue their education, as well as it allowed us to purchase an entire classroom set of furniture to expand programming. So it's been a great resource for sure.
Awesome, awesome.
And Madam President, Member Sorensen, I might add in closing that John was also instrumental in working with Ottawa University, along with our HR department, to provide opportunities for our employees at a discounted rate to start working to get their degrees. And so through John's work and through HR's work, we have opportunities, pathways for our employees to continue their education. And the hope would be that we hire preschool aides who then go to school through Ottawa and come back and teach for us as well.
Well, I happen to like Ottawa, so yes, there you go. And back to driver's ed, you do accept donations?
Always.
Okay, gotcha.
But the vehicle has to run.
Whoa. Yes, the vehicle would have to run. No, I mean, you know, if there could be somebody that's out there listening right now that has a vehicle.
Yeah, just go
runs
to
perfectly.
dysart.org/community education, and
There you go.
You'll find my contact info on there.
Free advertising right there. So thank you very much,
All right.
Mr.
Thank you.
Oh, quick question.
Yes.
So for the Growing Minds Preschool, when you talk about moving from a 3-star rating to a 4-star rating, who does those ratings?
First things first. So it's first
Okay.
things first program. Yep. It's quite an extensive process that we went through last spring. It started last fall and fall 2019. And obviously COVID slowed some things down, but we were able to get that temporary rating with the hopes that we're going to increase that over the next 12 months.
Okay. And so what would it take to get to the 5-star?
5
Is that
stars
a goal?
and 5-star really requires certified teachers running the programs.
Okay.
And right now, I mean, you can see from our mantra, that's not something that is sustainable for the services that we're
Right.
offering. So,
Understood. Okay.
but we can always try. All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Moving to information item G4, Dr. Cullis.
Thank you, Madam President. Based on recent conversations with the board, we are bringing this item forward, and Mr. Dean will introduce it.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Kellis, and members of Cabinet. This evening, I'm happy to provide information to you on some potential protocol updates as it relates to COVID that we'd like to discuss with the board. Joining me this evening in the presentation will be Karen Winterstein, our Director of Student Service. So we're going to tag team this presentation. So Karen will speak to you from the stand-up spot, and I will speak to you from the sit-down spot over here. So with that, we have 4 items that we'd like to discuss this evening as it relates to COVID protocol, the first being volunteers in the classroom. And this, Member Grant, this gets back to your question earlier. And so currently our protocol has been that we have not allowed volunteers in our schools this year. We've kept our schools pretty closed down to outside folks coming in. What we would like to do is we would like to recommend a change to that protocol to allow up to 15 volunteers per day in each school, not per classroom, but per day total, to assist teachers with learning loss efforts. So this would be one of our first steps to really begin to attack the learning loss pieces that we're seeing. Depending upon our conversation this evening, the plan would be that Dana Kay, our K-8 Director of Curriculum, would work with our elementary principals to put a protocol or a process in place, and then that would be rolled out so that we could begin this process the very first week of April. And so rather than waiting until the very end of the conversation, if you'd like, as a board, we can talk about these one by one. There's 4 total slides. We'd love to hear your thoughts on changing the protocol to begin to allow visitors or volunteers in our schools.
I would 1,000% support this change. Thank you.
I just have one question. So in the past, what? In the past, a volunteer would show up at the school and say, I'm volunteering in Mr. Dean's class, and then you'd sign in and you'd go back to Mr. Dean's class, walk in, they'd give you your box or your whatever. So with this, they would go in, the principal, whoever would say, you're going to go to Mrs. Smith's class today and help them with reading. So it could be a different class each day.
Madam President, Member Grant, it could be. What we would likely envision, and typically we get the majority of our volunteers in younger grades.
Yeah.
Not to say that we don't get them in all grades, but what we would likely envision is that our teachers would set up a rotation with their parents, their volunteers, members of our senior community who are regular volunteers, and that they would come in and they would work with smaller groups of students, one-on-one or very small groups of students, to assist with that learning loss. But that would be part of the process that would be planned with Miss. And I'm sorry, I used her former name, Dana Noble, Miss Noble, and our elementary principals in the next week or so.
And how will the word get out to these folks because I mean, up until now, it's, nope, we're not taking any volunteers. So how will these, not just parents, but some of the senior communities, like with some of the churches and stuff, they love to do this kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So how are they all going to be?
We would utilize our PR department in that plan to provide information to our general community that we are accepting volunteers again. We also have a very large volunteer bank currently in place. One of the great benefits we have as a school district is to have 3 large retirement communities in our school district, and many of them volunteer in our schools. And so we would look to start activating that as well.
Just go back.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other thoughts?
Just to clarify, the 15 volunteers per day, is that at one time?
That's just the thought would be that 15 is a manageable number in a day. It could be at one time. It could be throughout the course of the day. 15 people in the size of our buildings is not a large amount of people to add to our population.
I was just thinking, I mean, if we had like 15 in the morning, 15 late afternoon.
And what we would do is we would monitor this as we move forward, and we would love to be able to expand this quickly, because again, as you saw earlier, and anticipated, we have a learning loss that needs to be attacked, and this is one of the strategies to begin to attack that.
Okay, great, thank you.
The next piece, and Ms. Winterstein will talk about this, is a recommended change to our student quarantine process.
Yes, so currently the quarantine process that we have in place is for 10 school days. As you heard earlier from Dr. Weifrich, her grandson has had 2 of those episodes in which there's 2 weeks each of lost learning. And so what we would like to move to is both the CDC and the Maricopa County Department of Public Health have enabled an option to reduce quarantine to, instead of 7 days to 10, from 10 days to 7 days, with a caveat of they can provide a negative test that has been taken on either day 6 or day 7 to return on that 8th day. That way it would reduce that quarantine by those 3 days. I know that this is very much needed and has been asked for by both our students and our parents because they want to return to school. I can also assure you that the data that we have been collecting, my department manages all the numbers of the students that are positive, and our health office staff collects all the information on those students that are in quarantine. Very, very few, if any. Students rarely get become symptomatic or test positive after day 7, and usually those are connected with outside and are not connected to being transferred within a school setting.
Any questions, thoughts, comments as it relates to a recommended change to our quarantine process for students?
And these students, while they're quarantining, they're still going to have access to learning online from home?
Okay. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right, let's move to our third piece, and that is student and staff temperature checks. And both Ms. Winterston and I can address this issue. Currently, our protocol is that temperature checks for students occur throughout the school day, and temperature checks for staff occur at the beginning of each day. We are not currently recommending a change to this protocol. However, the Maricopa County Department of Health Services, in conjunction with the CDC, have indicated that temperature checks are not doing a lot of things to assist in this process. However, at this time of the school year with 1 quarter to go, as a matter of fact, I believe it's 45 days of school remaining, we are not recommending a change to this protocol. However, we will revisit the protocol at the end of the school year as it relates to next school year. Any
And
questions?
if I can add.
Please.
Right now, this process and procedure is so embedded into the routines of normal day that it is just the expectation, and our staff and students don't even think about it. So for us to complete the year in this way, I think is a very natural process. And then, of course, seeking guidance for whatever might be among the community or guidance from other entities, then we would definitely take a look to see if that procedure needs to remain in place or no longer be required.
Thoughts, questions, comments?
I just have one question. You said that this would be addressed, we're going to leave it in place throughout till the end of the school year, and it'd be addressed for next school year. What about summer school? Will it be addressed prior to summer school, or will it remain in place for summer school?
Madam President, Member Grant, we would have the conversation before summer school begins.
Okay. Thank you.
The only question that I have is not really related to the protocol, starting or stopping, but I know that there have been some inconsistencies as far as how the temperature checks are performed, whether it's done on the forehead or wrist, whether it is an option, whether it's mandatory. So can you speak a little bit to that?
I know that initially we are always doing it on the forehead. There are some parents who have asked us to not do the forehead and they prefer the wrist. The important piece is the consistency. So I know the thermometer in my office, when I do it every day, it's always within a couple of tenths. If it's up for a reason, I'll wait a few minutes and do it again. So again, it's the staff members who would be taking it on the wrist. They become very familiar with the normal temperature range for that student, and then that's where you would track what would be a normal or within range temperature. Because as we all know, if you take the temperature on your wrist, it is much cooler than your forehead area. But as long as the numbers are consistent, that's where we know that the student does not have a fever.
Okay.
Madam President, just to take that one step further, yes, there's flexibility, and we can make sure that we communicate to all of our staff that they should be flexible based on the request of the person whose temperature is being checked.
Thank you.
Very good. And the last item that we would like to discuss with the board this evening relates to masks and wearing masks during exercise. And yesterday during our weekly quick huddle meeting with our school administrators, we reminded all of them that masks may be removed during strenuous exercise, such as recess, or strenuous exercise times such as PE. The AIA recently has relaxed its mask mandate for athletes during competition time. So certainly as students are in non-strenuous situations, they should have masks on, but if they're playing at recess or physically actively participating during PE time, those would be times that masks could be removed. So, questions or thoughts or comments as it relates to the mask piece?
Thank you very much for your consideration in that. I think it's so important at all times that we allow our children to play freely and breathe freely, especially when it's warming up.
Agreed.
And
I'm a big fan of breathing.
yeah. But I can't even imagine as, we start hitting in, in the 90s and hundreds.
Sure.
It's going to be really tough for our little kids.
Agreed.
For all of us, but especially our little kids. And so I am just so grateful to see that. Thank you.
I do have a question. Do we anticipate requiring masks next year also?
Madam President, Member Chaffin, certainly that those conversations would be held, but those are also dependent on other entities. We're currently under orders from cities and counties that require mask wearing, and so we don't have full control in that conversation. Any other questions? Well, that will do it for us this evening, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have item H1, Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of Cabinet. We are thrilled this evening to have this item, and Mr. Croto will introduce it.
Thank you, Dr. Kellis. Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Kellis, Cabinet, and guests, administration is proud to recommend Mr. Joseph Martinez for the position of Assistant Principal at Valley Vista High School for the 2021-2022 school year. Mr. Martinez received a master's degree in Education Administration from Grand Canyon. He has 8 years' experience as a high school teacher and the last 2 years as a teaching and learning specialist at Willow Canyon High School. And so I will introduce Mr. Martinez to you after you vote, and we'll go from there. So we are very proud to have Mr. Martinez join us in administration. So any questions? I'll stand for any questions.
Well, you can sit for the questions. It's okay. It's okay. Mr. Martinez, did you bring that report? The 3-page, or no, I think it said 24-page report. You have it right there. Okay. So I see you're sporting the purple tonight. All right. You learned your lesson. One thing I did want to say is that you've been a great asset to Dysart, and the fact that you've taken some certification in FEMA, and which is, to me, that's a great feather in your cap. So thank you very much for everything you've done. Congrats.
With that, I will make a motion to approve the appointment of Joseph Martinez as high school assistant principal.
Second.
Seconded by Tracy Sawyer Sinkbell.
Oh, there it is. Yay.
Oh, hold on. There it goes.
And passes. Congratulations.
Congratulations and welcome. I'd like to welcome our new assistant principal now officially. So, welcome, Mr. Martinez. Glad to have you.
Next, we have item H2, Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President. This item is being brought back as a second read. There were some minor changes based on board feedback at the last board meeting. As we made those corrections, it is presented for your approval.
I do have a question. I don't know if I caught it the first time around, but in policy 9.46, it states that each student in grades 4 through 6 shall recite the following passage from the Declaration of Independence. You can see that right there. I'm not quite sure that our teachers, our classes in grades 4 through 6 are doing this. As you know, I taught at one of our Dysart elementary schools for several years, and then I subbed for a year. And I don't know that this is being implemented. Do our teachers even know that this is policy?
Madam President, Ms. Chaffin, this is an interesting one because it's currently, there's a bill in the legislature to modify the statute relating to this particular item and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. But this was based on statute initially, and that's why this is in here. I would agree with you that over the many years since that was first adopted, it has had that creep effect of time And it would be something that we'll probably wait and see what happens in the legislature, but if nothing changes, we do need to be compliant.
I'll make a motion to approve the revisions to policies within Section 9, Instruction 9.25 through 9.50 as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Grant.
Hold on, it's just not, there it is.
Motion passes. Next, we have item H3. Dr. Kellis.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and members of Cabinet. Mr. Hicks will introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Kellis, colleagues, and community members. Thank you very much for allowing me to present tonight. And tonight is a request that we're making to the board for a recalculation, a 915 ADE 15915 request to recalculate Dysart state aid. This was caused by the Arizona Department of Revenue, who is their responsibility for Transwestern Pipeline, which has property that runs throughout the state, that they are to provide a property valuation. That property valuation obviously incurs taxes and a tax rate applied to it. Transwestern believed that they were too high valuation assigned to their property as it went through. They went through the court system, litigated it, and Transwestern won. And so part of the resulting was that districts and all municipalities, all taxation jurisdictions had to refund the money and with interest. So this is for years 2016, 17, 18, and 19, and 20. For that refund. So that has already happened. So the county takes the money out of our account. So there's, some people say there's a disconnect. There is a little bit. So we can spend money by budget authority. Whether we have money or not is a different thing. So we've lost the cash out of it. This is a recalculation that will allow ADE to pay us for the majority of that fund that's been taken out. Reimburse us for a majority of that fund. Now the other fund, the other portion of it hasn't been restored yet, and there's a bill in the legislature right now that the legislature will backfill all that other funding. And so we would be made whole with that legislation, but at this point, we're really just asking ADE to recalculate our state aid as if it was out and then pay us the money that they would have paid us if this valuation would have done appropriately the first time. And I will stand for any questions.
Mr. Hicks, and you and I have talked about this. Is there the possibility that the legislation will not pass?
Madam President, members of the board, so this does happen, although it is very unique to us. It's unusual. This does happen from time to time. They have backfilled it. There's been other bills, and those have passed. I believe, now I'm going off the top of my head, the bill is 12 million, 10 million, 12 million. Technically, they have $3 billion of cash sitting down at the legislature, so I don't think financially there's a reason not to pass it. So I have not heard any opposition to it. So I guess technically any time a bill could be voted down and not pass, I think it's going to pass. This isn't a one district, this isn't a one city, this is one municipality. Transwestern Pipeline runs around I-40, down I-17, around some of the 303. So it touches many counties, many taxation jurisdictions, and so I do see them approving this.
Okay. Okay. I mean, you had answered my other questions and everything, but that for some reason it still just lingers out there that somebody might not want to see it passed. So, but okay.
I will make a motion to approve the authorization and certification of request for recalculation of state aid as applies to the Transwestern Pipeline litigation.
Second.
Seconded by Tracy Sawyer Sinkbell. Motion passes. Moving to item I1, request for future agenda items. Any requests? Okay. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second. Maybe?
Everyone's like, come on, let's go.
Yeah, there it is.
Don't vote no.
Is it gonna vote no again? Yeah. Somebody.